Buddy, to this as my earphone hangs drops out here. To this uh, Google Hangout on air for the NYC GEG and the Montreal GEG. This is really a continuation from a Google EDU on air workshop that talked about building a dynamic sort of database-like book review site using Forms and Google Sites. So this is to sort of skip over some of the things that we talked about in the Google Get Geeky today. And I've got a really awesome panel joining me here that's going to throw hardball questions at me and try to keep me off balance, which is could you guys introduce yourselves to our audience?
Sure. I'm Dan and Bimbo. I'm a tech coach, and John's book review site is really cool. So I've been trying to create some district and use some of the tricks that John put in there. So I'm excited to hear what he has to say firsthand tonight.
I'm a former Canada. Right now I work as an education and data consultant. And I'm really interested in putting something like this together for the website Canadian Ed Chat, for the Twitter chat.
And Jane, our master librarian. For a word, it's a panel.
Okay. Librarian at Maricosta High School, which is in Manhattan Beach, California. And I'm a big Google fan. I attended the Google Teacher Academy in Mountain View last summer. And I've used forms a lot, and I've learned how to sort them, and how to embed forms. And I didn't get to attend John's session live last week, but then I watched it, the archive, and boy, I need to learn how to do this. This is the next step I need to get to. And actually, the English department in my high school did this summer to instead of having students have to read, and they're going to read some engaging YA books and write reviews about them. And I suggested they submit them with a Google form, and I was planning just to sort them. And then when I saw what John is doing, I thought we need to set this up. So move on to this.
They'll be recorded, and if anybody has questions about anything that gets talked about today, just reach out on Plus or go to the GEG NYC or GEG Montreal site, throw some questions out there, and we'd be very happy to help you out. It's a lot, because what's great is if somebody takes a in their culture, in their environment, it invariably changes and then only gets better. So I can't wait to see how people remix this and make it better, and then hopefully then I could remix those mixes, and we could just keep learning from each other. So that's kind of my secret motivation here. All right, let's get started. So I'm going to do a screen share and presentation. In the chat, I threw the link, and it's also on the Google Hangout on air event page. So if you want to play along at home. Steps, and then I link the pages on different spreadsheets and sites as we go along, so that it'll be easier to follow. Okay, so we're going to get started now, and this is definitely going to be the Getting Geeky version of the site. So don't let that discourage you or freak you out in any way. If you think that there are going to be functions and formulas and things like that, but we're going to break them down, and they always look much worse than they actually are. This is an ambitious agenda. I would be really happy if we get past the first one, but I was thinking, it'd be the meat and potatoes of this advanced database, which I'm going to show you an example of in a second, is the HTML sidebar. So how do you build that dynamic HTML sidebar in a Google site using awesome tables and a spreadsheet? So we're going to look at that. And then sort of like the gravy is, connecting the site with different stakeholders, which I'll explain, using emails. And finally, keeping it dynamic so that as students submit forms, maybe they talk about who the book is good for, the form automatically updates based on those submissions. Keeping it fresh and keeping it in the student voice, which is really, I think, a cool feature of the site. Okay, so just to reiterate, this is a geeky conversation, but not to worry. You can always go back to the Google EDU on Air presentation and come back to this one because it's going to be recorded. And you can reach out online. You can get, on my blog at techtofu.com or on Google Plus or on Twitter. And if you have any questions, we can work through it. That's the beautiful thing about Google tools, right? You just share it with somebody and they can help from afar. All right, so we're going to start with awesome tables. Now, like this was described in the Google EDU Hangout. It's basically a Google Sites gadget. So this is specifically a Google Sites tool, and it connects a Google site to a Google spreadsheet, and it makes this really amazing sortable database. Now, what we're going to do is we're actually going to build a sidebar version of that. I think it's one of the cooler Google Awesome Tables varieties. There's a few different ways of using a table. That Romain Villard gadget. You could do like a map, a Google map. You could have like cards, which kind of look like buttons going across your Google site. This is the sidebar version. So I'm going to click on this link, open that up, and this is our demo site. And as you can see, we've left, and then we've got this sidebar, which changes as we pick different books. And it's got images of the book cover, and it's got this like star rating graphic. And all of these different elements were submitted by a student writing a form. And then the beautiful thing about Awesome Tables, I can simply sort using the filters along the top, which is a beautiful thing. So let's look at how this actually works. Now, this sidebar here is basically HTML. So at the root of it, we have to build that HTML dynamically from the form submissions. And that's where we're going to start. It sounds worse than it is. There's actually a trick. So the first thing you do is start with a site template. So I linked that here as well. It's also linked at the top of our Bookroom demo Google site. You'll see the page all the way to the top right is template. So the first thing you do is you just make your template. What do you want your sidebar to look like? And do it in a Google site. And stay away from like gadgets or any fancy JavaScript stuff. Just keep it simple with graphics and formatted text, right? But then you basically make whatever your sidebar is going to be. So this is my sidebar template. Once you have formatted this, using the edit page, section of a Google site, you make it however you want it to look, and then click on the HTML button, right? So this is my HTML. I don't have to be an HTML coder. If you are an HTML coder, more power to you. Go to town, customize your HTML code. If you don't have HTML under your belt, just do it in your Google site and then click on the HTML button, and you've got this beautiful Google Sites compliant HTML code that you can grab. So I'm going to grab this whole snippet, select all, and then copy it. And then I go to my my spreadsheet. So hold on, let me go back to my Google Hangout. All right, so how am I doing so far? All right, pretty easy, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's
Looks great. Yeah, copying somebody else's code is definitely the way to go.
yeah, right on. I mean, you know, I mean, you could slave over even if you do know HTML. Why would you slave over it? You know, do it in your Google site, and then button and copy that bad boy. And then okay, so then once you have that, you go to your where your that your form is attached. And what I do is I just make like a new page. I call it HTML, and then I paste it into there. And the trick is, and this is like the most time-consuming part of the whole process, the trick is to just find where the variables are in the HTML. So let me go back. I'm going to do screen share again. So a variable is basically, in your site, a variable is going to be anything the student submitted in their form. So it's whatever's going to change when you click on a different book. The variables are the parts that change to reflect the new submission. So let's look. So this is my HTML page in my Google site. I'm actually going to click this link down here, and it's going to open up the HTML. Oh no, it didn't. Oh, that's a bummer. Hold on. Let me go back. Okay. All right, so I'm going to fix that right now. Hold on a second. Let's open up that spreadsheet. I'm going to go to my spreadsheet and just fix that link. So bear with me. All right. Let's see. HTML, there we go. Great. So let me fix my link here. Wow, that's ugly. All right. Okay. That's better. All right. So now, if we go in there, to make it a little bit easier for myself, I've already I highlight the sections that are the variables, different color, just so I know where they are. But what I'll do is I'll take all of that code and I'll just paste it in to one cell, like this. Copy all that stuff. Go over here, paste it all in. All right. Now what you have to do is you have to go through until you hit those variables. So, and it's the worst part of this whole process. But once the whole thing is done, you never have to touch this again. It just automatically will create all those reviews. So if you wind up with 100 reviews, they're all automated, and you don't have to touch it. So this initial outlay of effort works out. So then I'll take all of this HTML here, right up to the variable. And the variable at the top of my formatted page is the title, the bad beginning. And I'll just cut that out, you know, Command X, and I'll paste in the first part of my HTML. And then I've got my variable, the bad beginning, which winds up being the title. I'll cut that out, and I'll put it in the next row. And I'll just keep doing this, right? Written by, all the way to Lemony Snicket is the next variable, so I'll cut out the code, paste it there, and so on. I'll cut out Lemony Snicket, and I'll put that there in its own row. So when I'm all said and done, this is what I wind up with. The HTML has its own cell, and in between the HTML cells are my variable cells. All right, how am I doing?
That makes a lot of sense.
Right? Like really, it's actually remarkably simple. So, all right. So now, this is the worst part because you have to be really careful to get all of the variables. and if you're not used to looking at code like this, you'll notice that sometimes it doesn't paste nicely. Mm-hmm. So I'll even go through and sort of like clean it up a little bit so it's easier for me. I'll add some page breaks and stuff, or not page breaks, line breaks. Mm-hmm. But yeah, once that is, then it's time to build your sidebar page. So right here, the sidebar column. So I'll actually, this was kind of covered in the beginner book review, but there is a sheet called Awesome Table in the spreadsheet that I'm going to connect to the Awesome Table gadget later on. Now, what I'll do is all the way in this Awesome Table sheet, I've got all of the variables that I need. I've got the title of the book, I've got the plot, the review, all that stuff. Everything that I'm going to need in my HTML sidebar has to be on this page. It doesn't have to be, but that's how I like to do it. And then all the way over on the right-hand side, I'll add a column. I'll call it HTML. And I'll use this function right here. All right, so actually that's not it. Hold on. This is the function. Okay, so this basically just connects the pieces, right? So an array formula will affect every entry all the way down the sheet, right? So it'll say, it'll connect everything that pertains to row 2, and then it'll go down to row 3, 4, all the way down to the bottom. Now, what I need to do is I need to do some concatenating. So the first say, okay, if column H equals something greater than 0. So if you look at column H is a book review column. So if there's anything in this column, that means there must be a review. So if there's anything in that column, there must be a review. Then take one from the page HTML. If you go to the HTML page, let me move this out of the way here. Okay, page, you look at B1. That's our first snippet of HTML. And then there's a concatenate and. Like this little ampersand is basically all you need to concatenate cells, to add cells together. So it says, okay, take the snippet from HTML B1 and add it with what's in E3. And if you can imagine, E3 is the title of the book, right? So wherever there's a title of the book, it's gonna throw it in between those two cells. Mm-hmm. And you just keep doing this all the way until you get to the end of the HTML page. You're just taking bits of HTML and you're concatenating them. You're joining them together with the variables. And what you wind up with is you wind up with a column that has the HTML for the sidebar. And that's how every time a student makes a new submission, it makes a dynamic HTML sidebar to work. Okay.
How did you set up was it the array?
Yeah, so doing array formula is actually it's actually an easy thing. All you have to do is whenever you're doing a formula, you start it with the equal sign. So that tells the spreadsheet that it's a function. So I'll do equal sign and then I'll type in array formula. And then it's simple as creating, in this case, an if-then statement. So if you look at our array formula here, right at the top, it's array formula and then parentheses if. And then this is kind of a neat trick. If you are new to formulas, once you start doing a formula, what you can do once you start the equal sign, and in this case array formula, if you click on the cell, there's a little like question mark that pops up on the top left. You can click on that, and it gives you help as to whatever function you're working with. So I can click on my array formula, and then it gives me this little box right underneath it that tells me exactly what works. Right? It gives me like the code speak here of what you need, and then it tells you what it's supposed to do. If that's still not enough, I can click Learn More About Array Formula on the bottom, and it takes me to the Google page.
Putting this in that HTML column.
Yeah, now that's the Magians have their own book databases that they like to use. So they'll just do like a quick search, and they'll copy the web address of the book cover from the search, and they'll just paste it in there. So like my librarian, Kate, she uses Syndetics, the if this, and then you see this comma. Oops, I just messed it up. That comma right at the end, that is the fan. So it's like, if the condition is equal to 0, do all of this concatenated stuff with the HTMLs and the variables. Otherwise, do nothing. That's what so that's where she's getting her book covers. Now what I did, not realizing that she would have a preference, in other words, if it is equal to 0, if there's nothing in the cell and the next cell in column H, then there's no review to be made, and just leave a blank cell there. Don't put anything in it, right? So that's the 3 parts to my if-then statement. If this, then that.
John, have you ever used the excuse me, the HTML templates in Awesome Tables?
No, I've never used that.
That's formula. It sort of sorts that for you, and I had to dig around a lot to find it because it's not documented on Romaine's site. Okay, so I'll share my screen. I've been noodling around with my own site while I've been listening. The templates.
Yeah. All right. So I got a little fancier. Not too much, but I created a. I think that this. I don't think I needed to do this, but when you do a search in library thing, it automatically changes. It automatically replaces the spaces with plus signs, right? So I created another column, and I used another array.
Yeah. So you put in placeholders. So what I did. Let me zoom my window in a little bit here. So I created a tab called Templates, and this one here is when I was messing around earlier. But name the first row, you name it the same thing as the column header that it's going to replace. So cell B1 is called Sidebar because I want it to apply to my column called Sidebar. And then cell B2, I paste in my HTML.
Nice.
And the tag has to be wrapped in a $sign.
Very cool.
Yeah, so thing, but it makes for a much better book review site to have those book covers.
As it appears. So if I wanted book title to be replaced, and then a close brace bracket. No, sorry, I have the quote and the brace bracket mixed up. It's $brace bracket quote, the column header, and then a close quote and a close brace bracket. And so what it'll do is it'll go through, and every row it'll look at these column headers and replace the tag with the column header, with the content from that column. So it all came together when I started looking at your idea of using the template
in the database, right? So if I do like 3 times lucky, student has reviewed it, it's going to be, review 1, review 2, review 3 in chronological order. So function average the reviews the same, and I don't know, you can get pretty complicated with it, but we're just going to just kept it as if more than one child reviews a book, like if they see a book review that they disagree with on the site, then we are encouraging them to like review it again, tell us why you disagree.
Mm-hmm.
And it would just be an alternate review in the list of reviews. Totally what I'm going to do next time.
Yeah, I was like, oh, everything all of a sudden just clicked.
Brilliant. I love it. That's so cool. Thanks a lot.
So you could essentially take, still build the page, right? Go into the HTML editor from the page and then paste it inside the template.
And I'm going to go
Better.
And I love how you just took has been reviewed more than once. It's going to just show up multiple times here. Bracket, quotation, $sign.
It was one of those like slap the forehead. It's so brilliant. I wish I'd thought of that months ago.
To get the different opinions. Great.
So now I have to learn how to make the sidebar look good.
Then I'll get it, I think.
Well, I mean, yeah, you know, I mean, that little trick right there, Jane, that is such a cool little trick. Although I think in a way it makes it easier, but at the same time, I feel like it might when you're just starting it the first time.
Yeah, you might not understand what's happening behind the scenes because it's not transparent the way a formula is.
Yeah, it's a little.
I need to work it through the way from the beginning that you did, John, right? And then
We're just going to post all of the source code that I use.
Right.
Just
Talking about again.
I was writing down, you know, the
layer of complexity to it. So I'm curious.
So wait, give me a while.
Did the review, all of that stuff, you know, longhand, just so I could kind of wrap my brain around the array formula that you had.
You know, like you have all of the source files from our site. I don't know if, like, there's a couple of things that are kind of tricky, and there's probably better ways to do this too. So I'm really glad that we have all these people involved because they, you know, might give me a good forehead in about 10 minutes. But other little things. Because, you know, invariably you want certain things to be contingent, like those when the student reviews a book and says this is a 4-star book, you can't put a
commitment to help the English department with summer reading. It's going to be the students are selecting from a set of books, and it's not being a librarian. I would have long and lots of choice. They've made it shorter, although they're good books. So, in other words, a lot of kids are going to be reading the reviews for that same book. So, I'm going to be wanting to sort.
Go to this page. Again, this looks worse than it is. I found cool star graphics online, and I downloaded all the different versions of them. So if I click on this link right here, it's going to show you no stars, right? If I go back. We
aren't going to know who their teachers are when they read during the summer, but we might plug the teachers in later so that they can search by their teacher so they can.
When you're on a Google site, on the very, very bottom of that site, you have the attachment section.
Multiple kids are reviewing the same book, and John and James, I haven't really played around with it, but the awesome tables, maybe to choose like the card setting might be cool. Like I'm just envisioning the back of a book.
This screenshot. I can just right-click or control-click on that, copy the link address, and it's like having a link for that graphic. So.
At the same time, it's cool to see all of those things on the screen at the same time too.
Yeah, like an idea, because we will, as I said, I'd love to eventually apply this to every which book. It's going to be, oh, maybe.
And there are links to the bottom of a Google site. Now, if I go over to my moderation page here, which we talk about in the Google Edu Hangout, and I scroll over, where's my stars? Hiding it. Yeah. All right, so I was hiding that column. It was in column P. Click on P2, which is the first cell underneath the header.
Site, I saw there were different options. Yeah.
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 So, you know, one of the things I wish Awesome Tables also did very easily was create pages on the card. It would just open up the page easily, like a Google site page that was created across the entire column. So it kind of iterates for each column. And that's what this little, it's like if you have a lot of, one of the challenges I think with the card format is if you have a lot of content, it's hard to fit it, the $ freezes it on cell 2. And then the colon means it's a range. So it starts on K2 and it goes all the way to the bottom of K, whatever that number is. So there is no...
in a window open with a link, but there's no way to, I haven't found a way to actually move in the same tab to like create new pages or anything. I've just stacked
on the stars sheet, and I know it's a sheet because it's followed by this exclamation point. That exclamation point separates the sheet name with the cell. So it has to be stars, the stars sheet, cell D2. So if I go to look for stars on the bottom of my spreadsheet, and I look at D2, that's the graphic for no stars. Mm-hmm. And it just iterates that for all the different numbers, all the way up to if the child says the book is rated a 4, then it needs to be the full graphic for all 4 stars. And if there's nothing in K, then leave nothing in that cell so that it doesn't show anything. It'll be like the end of the reviews. Sort of like finishes the formula. All right, so that's how you take a text value like a 0 or a numerical value like a 0 or a 2, and you convert it to a web link of a graph written by James Ferrara.
And the header for that column?
What was that, Jane?
You put
it's a I don't think it's aged well. You can't have a function and the text at the same time. So like the header is Starlink. It's just Starlink, no function. And then right underneath it, I've got the formula.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
And then you'll notice that it starts working right away. So P2 actually will give me a link because the array formula, since the array formula starts at K2, this is going to start, because the array in P2, the function starts right away, and the link automatically shows up there. It will continue all the way down until there's nothing in K2 anymore, or in column K. So right here, so P2, and the reason this is blank is because if I go over to K is blank. Right. Now, one of the real challenges, we have this system working across multiple buildings. So let's say we have 5 buildings, right? And if a particular building writes a review, I want the librarian for that building to be the moderator, to be the person who moderates the review.
In the positions that we're kind of all in, your cell has to be, this is not that bad, this is not that bad, it's not that hard, we can do this, and then you go to make a presentation or you go to say how simple this is and you're ready.
go over to, I'm going to go to formRanger lists. So if the child said Green Acres, so let's say 1. If the child is from building 1, so they identify. Bob, you know what? I'm gonna turn off the broadcast. So thank you everyone at home for watching, and this has been a Getting Geeky with Awesome Tables and book reviews. Thanks again. Now the challenge is when you're doing an array, you can't use a vertical lookup. Vertical lookups are like point to point. I can only do one row at a time.